Are you ready to embrace a healthier, more vibrant life? Look no further than With Joy, a transformative movement and nutrition program that goes beyond the ordinary. With Joy is not just a program, it's a movement. We believe that true wellness encompasses mind, body, and spirit. Our approach is rooted in compassion care, tailored to each individual. We're here to elevate you to a place of health, wellness, and healing. Whether you're a seasoned athlete or just starting your fitness journey, we've got something for you. Our comprehensive programs include strength, mobility, endurance, and conditioning to elevate your fitness, recovery and recuperation for healing, and nutrition wellness plans to fuel your body for optimal performance. Check out our show notes for more information and links to our programs. Join the With Joy movement today and discover a whole new way to thrive.
Hi, I'm Joy Han Silva.
And I'm Laura Han Segundo Collins.
And welcome to Hahnacity. Hey, Laura.
Hey, Joya. How's it going?
Going well. As you can see, I'm not at home.
You're not at home.
I am on vacation.
How's vacation going? Where are you at?
I'm in Portland, which is really cool. Keep it weird.
Portland, Oregon, Portland, Maine.
Portland, Oregon. Yeah, it's been raining the majority of the time we've been here. Sounds about right. Yeah.
But green and beautiful.
Very green and beautiful. And we've been having a lovely time. I came up here with my boyfriend.
Hey.
Who I am not with right now because I kicked him out to go downstairs in the lobby. So I can talk to you
so much, boyfriend. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Anything exciting that you've done? You do have to
tell me. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I have to tell you guys because I forced the BF to go to the sports bra with me, which is this amazing sports bra that only talks or only shows women's sports.
So badass.
So I sort of dragged him, and I didn't really drag him. He wanted to go. He was totally up for it, but it was so cool. And I will say this, we had a burger, and you're going to actually frown on this because we had these crazy large ribs too. But it was like heavy on heavy. And we actually like switched out the patty for a grilled chicken.
Oh boy. I was like, what do you mean brown? Meat on meat. What are you talking about? Yeah. Okay.
And I will say this, Marvin said it was the best grilled chicken sandwich he ever had. And we substituted it, and it was really good. So
great.
It was delicious. I think it would change your mind. They also had fried like chicken wings, and we had thought about that, but it was like, that might have been too much. But we went to the sports bra, and it was really amazing. And everything was women's sports, and it was packed. Like, we got there just in time before the crowd came, and we like sat down, and then literally people were coming in. So
awesome.
That's really cool. You guys are ever in Portland, go check it out because it's really just, you go in and you just feel empowered in the space. But this is a perfect way to segue about talking about women's sports. And we get to talk to this amazing athlete, Allie, who was a competitive sailor. And so
kick-ass Allie. So excited. Yeah. So excited to talk to Allie today. Joy, actually, maybe you could read her bio. Get us going.
Absolutely. All right, so Allie Tillinghast is the founder and president of Thriving Not Surviving Incorporated, a 501c3 nonprofit corporation intended to help sexually assaulted athletes continue to pursue their athletic aspirations after being assaulted. Thriving Not Surviving offers advocacy services, can connect individuals to legal resources, and can provide monetary grants. Allie is also a former international competitive sailor and a collegiate athlete, and we are so privileged to have her on our show. So without further ado, here's Allie.
Woo-woo! Well, hi, Allie. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a joy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Maybe if you could share with our listeners a little bit about you to start at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Allie. I am the founder and president of Thriving Not Surviving Inc., a 501c3 nonprofit corporation intended for sexually assaulted athletes to help them continue to pursue their athletic aspirations after being assaulted. So we really try to provide grants, so monetarily helping people, but also kind of connecting them with the resources that they need after being assaulted. So whether that's legal support or whether that's more psychological support, and trying to be like a clearinghouse for survivors after their assault to try to get them back to their sport, but also just to help them recuperate. So that's kind of what our mission is. And I founded it after I was assaulted when I was 17. And so it's just like really mission driven and led by myself and a board of people who are all really dedicated and motivated to help other survivors and to kind of figure out what the greatest need is at whatever time, and to how we can be able to support survivors and what we need to be able to create on behalf of the organization. But I'm also a sailor, a lifelong sailor, and I competed both across the US, internationally, and then I also competed in college.
Such an interesting sport. Because I think you're the first that I know of in my life that I've met a sailor. So how did you get into sailing?
Yeah, absolutely. So sailing's definitely very interesting, very unique. Everyone always confuses sailing with rowing. So that you are not alone in it being a new sport. But I got into it from my dad, actually. He sailed and he kind of brought me along with it. So my whole family sailed, was on the water. And I also did ballet. My parents definitely had me in a lot of sports, so tried them all. And ballet and sailing were the ones that stuck. And I ended up having a foot surgery, so couldn't really do ballet as much, and then just really focused on sailing. And the cool part about any sport, but especially about sailing, is you're able to enjoy it at whatever state and whatever. It can be so competitive, but still you're on a boat in a beautiful place on the water. Like it can't get much better than that.
Yeah.
So it's a very unique and special sport for that. But I also think there's a part of that kind of beauty and serenity that you can feel in all different sports when you really do love it. And you're like, oh, like that's your happy place. That's where you enjoy. And that's kind of where like that passion comes from. But I especially think that way with sailing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Such a good point. The uniqueness of your sport and the longevity of it is something pretty special. So this season, me and Laura have been talking about athlete as identity and a lifespan. And we kind of talk about, with me and Laura, there's like this genetic makeup in us of being an athlete and how we approach things in our lifespan. And it's not just in our sport, but how, like with you, you've started your own organization, all these things. What is your genetic makeup of being an athlete?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that being an athlete to me has always been in some way, shape, or form my entire life. And that's who you are. And you kind of like, for me in high school and in middle school and college, it was like, well, Allie sails. Allie's the sailor. And it's like, that's what you are. And that's great. But it's also, you're so many other things. You're also a friend and a daughter, and you're also a student, and you're also a person. Like you have so many other facets about you. And I think that it's something that it's great. And it's also when you're doing other things and maybe you're focused on other parts, you kind of sit back and realize, especially I think this past year, I've started a more traditional job. And I'll notice and I'll be like, oh, people don't know me as a sailor. They'll know, oh, she sailed. And that's kind of the second thing. And it's this very cool thing because you're like, I still have this. And you can get kind of sad about it, I think, because it's a different part of your life or it's a different time. You can also look at it and be like, I still have this really interesting thing that I can talk about, but it's not the only thing I can talk about. It's something, but it's not my whole identity, which it can definitely be at times.
Yeah. Allie, what drew you so first of all, how old were you when you first got on a boat for the first time, for example? And then what drew you yourself? I know you were introduced to sailing through your dad, but what drew you to sailing?
I'd say I was probably on a boat for the first time very casually when I was probably within like a year of being born. I'd say it was just very casually, like just with family and whatnot. I would assume. And I'd say what drew me to sailing is, like I said, I don't know how to describe it because I think so many other sports are you're inside, or they're so intense and it's just you, and it's a very different atmosphere and environment and vibe, honestly. But sailing, it's always outside. You're always with other people. You're always like, there's a attitude and energy around it that it enables you. You can get so intense, you can get so wrapped up in it. But if I were to show you a photo of sailing, you would be like, oh, that's so beautiful. You're not going to think like it can be the most intense moment. It can be the most intense regatta or competition, but you're not going to see it and be like, you're not going to see that. Versus I feel like with another sport, let's take a basketball, for example. If we were to look at a photo of someone playing basketball, it's going to have a very different energy surrounding that, because it's inside. You're seeing that intensity. You're seeing all of that energy kind of built up in that photo, versus a sailing, you're in this beautiful place. And I think that's what probably drew me toward it initially, and also just kind of loving that and feeling, and you're outside and you're in the water, and it's just ideally not in the water, but the water's on you. Like it's an awesome sport, and it's an awesome feeling from that, I would say.
Do you still sail?
Yes. Yeah. So, but that's the cool thing with sailing is that you can do it at any point. You can do it at a very intense and competitive level, but you can also do it. I'm able to sail with my dad. I can be on a boat, maybe not competitively sailing, with my mom. I can sit you're able to do it kind of whatever intensity and level. And it's also a cool sport because especially at the college level, there's a lot of other college athletes who all did sail, and it's a very unique sport. Like at work, I'll say I sailed and people are like, oh, like crew or like rowing or what? And it's like, or people think of like a 100-foot yacht, and it's like, no. We're talking about like a 14-foot boat. Like it's a 14-foot 2-person boat. Like it's very different. So it is so unique that sometimes you have to, people who know it and have experienced that and have been on a boat will understand it, but otherwise it's a little foreign, I think. But because of how different it is, I think it creates a really great community around it, of people. So I think that's particularly special.
Yeah.
When you were a kid, Allie, did you know that you wanted to compete in sailing though? Or was it sort of like this natural progression that you were like excelling and there was like, she's pretty darn good at this and let's just keep moving her up? Or was there something innately in you that you're like, no, that's what I want to do in my sport, and I want to, go and compete and do things collegiately and all that stuff?
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that, because when I think my whole life, I loved sports. Like I wasn't really into basketball or soccer, but I loved doing sports, and I loved like watching the Olympics. I couldn't do gymnastics for the life of me. I literally can't do a handstand. I would watch gymnastics and I'd be like, yeah, like I am Simone Biles. Like I would pretend that I was on the balance beam in my like parents' living room on the carpet. Like I would watch the US Open and I'd be on my parents' bed, like jumping around, like pretending I was Serena Williams. I loved sports, and I loved that like feeling of, I'm trying to put it into words, but it's just the feeling that you're representing both yourself and your sport and your country, and just like kind of on that level, it has a very unique and rewarding feeling, I think. And I always knew that I loved that. I always knew it. There were some sports that I just knew I wasn't gonna be good at. I knew I tried swim team for one day, and I think for 24 hours after I was in recovery mode. I'm not a swimmer. But you do another sport and you're like, I just love this energy. I just love moving around. I just love that like satisfaction. So I think it kind of came naturally, that just sailing and going through the motions and doing the things. And with sailing, it's a little different than I'd say another sport, but just going through those motions, you kind of progress and you kind of go forward. But I think that, sorry, something just popped up on my computer, but I think that it naturally happened, but then you're also able to kind of feel that energy and you're like, oh, I love this. And you really are able to enjoy it. And then you look back and you're like, oh, wow, that's so cool. And of course that's what happened. Because if you love it when you're younger and it's a sport that you're probably never going to do in that level. So you have a competitive spirit
And you enjoy being able to represent and do something, challenge yourself to a next level that is just within you. Talk about genetic cellular level stuff right there.
Yeah, I'd say that my whole family definitely is very competitive, very athletic, my brother was in the military. And so it's that level of just intensity that it's like everyone does something. Like I was saying this to a couple of people I work with, that my parents never had me have, like, if I said I was hanging out, they'd be like, well, what are you doing? Like, are you like, what is it that you're doing? Are you getting dinner? Are you getting ice cream? Like, there was no hanging out. So because there's no hanging out, you're always moving, you're always active, you're always doing something, you're always involved in something, that it's just kind of naturally, like, if you're always around that and that's what's normal to you, you're going to kind of dive headfirst into whatever the next thing is. And if that's the way it is, then you're like, oh, like, that's normal to you and that's natural to you.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
that's interesting.
So, Allie, there's a shift in your story, and this sort of goes into a span of you in your adulthood doing something that's really impactful in your life that gives a new meaning of being a sailor. Share what you want, but can you share a little bit about your story and that shift of your sport kind of turning, making a left, and just share your story and what you're comfortable with?
Yeah, absolutely. My story and kind of how I came about with Thriving Not Surviving and starting that organization, as I was 17 when I founded it. I say that now and it sounds very impressive, but at the time I started it in a hotel room on like a family vacation on a note card at the hotel, like on the little like notepad by the bed, because I was like, oh, like, I think it would be really cool to have an organization that helped other people who, because I had just gone through this, I was going through that ordeal, because I had just been assaulted, and it was a really horrible process, because after I was raped, and after that, I didn't want to go back to my sport. I thought that I correlated it to my sport because it happened at a sporting while I was supposed to be sailing at Regatta, and happened while I was there. And so I correlated the two, and I was, well, if I hadn't sailed or if I hadn't been here, it wouldn't have happened. And so you correlate it and you give it, you create it in your head, and then that's the way it is. And it's very hard to kind of backtrack from that. And so I was really stuck in that, and I was really scared, and I felt so out of control with everything. And I was really scared because my rapist was still sailing, and so he was still able to be at the regattas and stuff. And it was a very public situation, so a lot of people had opinions and thoughts. And so I correlated the sport to my assault. So I kind of put that together, and I was like, yep, I'm never going to sail again. And I was thinking, okay, how do I move on? But I still loved sailing. I still loved the sport. So I was so sad about not being able to sail, but also that I had lost that too. And so that happened for a couple months, and I was going through my own healing process, going through an FBI investigation and a safe sport investigation, and going through it at 17 and being a junior in high school and applying to colleges. And I mean, I look back on that time and thank God it's behind us. Like there's no way that humans aren't meant to do that. And I think that you kind of, and I remember thinking about the idea to start Thriving Not Surviving, and that I want to create this because there are so many other people that are going through that too. And you kind of think of it then in this like much broader way, and you're like, well, I'm going through this and it's so hard for me and it's so sad for me. And there's so many things that I'm dealing with in me and my family. And I have an amazing family and an amazing support network and coaches and friends and family. And if I was still going through it and that was so hard for me, then how is it for someone else who doesn't have that network? And that's how I thought of, very naturally. It sounds very like frilly now, but at the time it was like, well, how do other people deal with it? Yeah. And so it came up that, okay, so there needs to be an organization to help people and to create this support network for other people that I naturally was lucky enough to have, or felt that I had enough people to make up this network. So it just kind of came about, and then there's some of the intricacies of creating an organization, but it all just kind of, it works because when you tell your story and you say, this is why I started this organization and this is my story and kind of where I'm coming from, people get engaged because it clearly, it still holds a place with me. It's something I'll always be passionate about. There's only 24 hours in the day, but I'll always make time for it. Like I'll always like, it's something that I'm like, because I know that person who's in it right now and who they can't get out of it. And it's also just, you want to be able to give people whatever support and encouragement that they need, but you also want to be able to provide whatever support for them to get what they need, but also to be able to get back to a sport that they love too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that through finding Thriving Not Surviving and through figuring out all of the intricacies and the things that needed to be involved and included in it, I was able to meet a lot of supportive people, and they were able to kind of find that time, honestly, from themselves and want to take part too. And I think that started, and just wanting to be able to give back to a community, to the survivor community, and say that this does happen, and there needs to be a more solidified network and support system out there that can't be going to 17 different places. And it needs to be something that you can come to Thriving Not Surviving, and we can support you and help you and hear your story. And what is it that we need to do now? What avenue do you want to go down? These are some options, but what is it that you need? What is it that we can do for you? And I think that coming from myself, and we have a board of people who all have kind of different walks of life, but are all mission driven and oriented from the same way, that just want to help survivors and have their own expertise and experience, but we're able to maybe shift as to what survivors may need and what the current situations are. When I was 17, things are different than they are now, and the state of what needs to be done and how we can help. And I think that this is an awesome opportunity just to be able to talk and just to be able to hear as to how something, like I said, I think that like starting an organization like that at 17 years old sounds so crazy. It sounds, oh my gosh, how does that happen? But it's like, at the time, it just kind of naturally happened. Like, perfect example, that the national color for sexual assault awareness is teal. And when we started the organization, we had a website and everything was very small and little, and we were just about to have the launch. And we are trying to create, sorry if you hear my dog in the background, if we are trying to create what the color would be for the organization. And I was like, oh, well, like the world's our oyster. We can look at all of these different color palettes. And I was like, I didn't realize that there was a national color. Like you just like there was already an established color, but it's just, I think because it naturally and organically happened, now I'm able to look back on it and be like, this is so awesome and this is so great, but that's only just a product of when something comes about naturally. But yeah.
I also think there's like a connection of story. Laura and I always talk about how powerful storytelling is, and even just something like a color story, of picking teal and like the significance of that and why that is like a powerful color and the message behind it, right? And that we as humans connect to a story, right? And your story is powerful. That's why your organization, people are connected, because it feels authentic, because it's personal to you, and people are really connecting to that piece of the story. And as we go through certain things like abuse, like me and Laura in our first season, we never shared our story with each other. And it was this really sort of great, in some ways, epiphany, where I did not communicate my abuse until like 6 months before we started recording. And this happened 30 years ago. But there is this unique link that bonds people through their stories and connects in a different way, and that healing process comes out of it. So it's just really powerful, and takes a lot of courage to do so. So I just wanted to let you know that. I just need 1 second because I need Kleenex, because I got a little bit teary-eyed.
Yeah,
Hold on.
Yeah. No, take your time. Take your time.
Okay. This is what
Actually,
happens
this is
with our
helpful too.
podcast, actually. A lot.
Oh no.
Got to Sally.
I know, I really got there for a second. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Allie, also just holding you in support and care and love thank you for sharing your story with us, because it's every single time we share, it's also as in some ways liberating it can be and connecting for other people. It's also revisiting in many ways these experiences, and we all get kind of pulled back to these places. So recognizing that when we are opening up is also going to bring all kinds of thoughts and feelings. So we just acknowledge and hold you in that space, and thank you for sharing as well so
No, of
much.
course.
Yeah.
It's a cool opportunity to be able to share, because I remember very early on in my healing process, right after everything happened, that I was told, like, I thought about it 24/7. I was thinking about it when I was supposed to be sleeping. I was thinking about it when I should have been eating. I was thinking about it when, no matter what. And I couldn't move past what had happened. I couldn't have my safe space, which was sailing, which was an escape, and I couldn't do anything. And my life was so tied to that. And I really, really did think that I was always going to be what happened to me. And I think that because of that, I created this, now I look back on it and I created a real divide of, there's a lot of people that I'm very close with today that I don't talk about this with. And it's not because I don't care about them and I love them and I would talk about it with them, but it's just, I don't need to as much. So you kind of create this divide and separation between it all over time. And I think that I look back on it and I remember I'd truthfully say it was probably like 2 years that it was every day that I would think about it. I'd wake up and I'd think about it, and I would go to sleep and I'd be thinking about it. And it's all my family and I talked about, and it's all me and my friends talked about, and it's all my whole life was. But at the same time, I had some friends that knew about it and some friends who didn't know about it. So I would go to school and no one knew, and I would not be able to be sailing. So all my sailing friends knew and my family knew. But then eventually, about almost a year, no, maybe it was like a year and a half after, I ended up telling my high school friends. And I was very close with these girls, and they were all so emotionally upset about it. And I was so upset about it. But that was a year and a half. And then now there's people that I just never told because I've met them after the fact. And they don't know. I'll say when I talk about something that I'm doing, Thriving Not Striving, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a part of this organization. And no, like I do this work because for me, it's like, it's so much a part of me, but it's not who people need to know me as. They don't need to know me as like, this is what happened to her when she was 17 years old. It can also be something that did happen, but I've also done so many things since then. It's like, I really, and I think about this a lot, and this is what really not empowers me to do more, but I did not think for a long time that I would be able to move past what happened to me. And moving past and looking at my life today, you have to sometimes pinch yourself and say, like, this is so amazing. And I think that that's a very cool opportunity, and I never would want to lose that by bringing my new life and my new people in my life and saying, oh, well, when I was 17 years old, this is what happened to me. And for me, it's like, yes, that is what happened to me. And yes, that was so horrible, but it's a really nice Saturday. So let's have fun and there's so much more life to be lived. Like the world did not end when that happened. Like, and I really did think it was. So that's why now I would say, and I talk about this a lot, that like, I have an appreciation for life, because you see when things are so horrible and you think you've hit rock bottom and you think that this is it. Every day from there is so much better. Like, you have a new appreciation for every day, even the bad ones. Like, there is no bad day when you've had your rock bottom. And for that, it's a very weird thing to say I'm grateful, but I have an appreciation.
Absolutely.
That's what it's like.
I'm so sorry. I
moment.
really,
No,
Nope,
that's
nope.
so
Hey,
beautiful. No
we have
sorry's
a-
allowed.
Yeah. Also, we have a rule. We don't have to say sorry. You never, ever have to say sorry. Ever. There is no need to say sorry. We apologize as women. We apologize as people of color. We apologize so much all the time anyway, let alone when trauma happens and then we apologize some more.
yeah.
We never, ever have to apologize. And in fact, reminding each other that when we say these stories out loud and as you're speaking, it's like you're a gem. I think everyone as of gems. I think of everyone as a gem. You just,
That's so beautiful.
we have like, if you take the gem and you look in one way, you see one facet. There's all these facets to gems. And, especially when I'm working with clients, sometimes we get stuck in seeing just a couple facets. But if we kind of keep turning the gems around, we see that we are these complete, beautiful, sparkly, so many pieces to us, so many sides to us. And what you're saying is like, this isn't the only thing. And sometimes I feel like when we talk about what things that have happened to us, it's like watching a car crash, the people just get stuck and watching and they can't but they shift their heads over. They'll see that there's so much more to the story. A person is absolutely complete. And I think that is also part of the healing, which that's what you're talking about. You're like, hey, look, I'm not just this. I'm so much more. I'm a friend and a daughter and I'm a worker and I'm a college graduate. And I've traveled the world and I've learned so many things. There's so much more. So you being able to reclaim that each time, or just being able to own that for yourself, or you don't have to explain yourself every single time. You don't have to do anything. And
Yeah.
that's the beautiful thing. And you definitely don't ever have to say sorry. Hell no. Mm-mm. So Allie, thank you again for sharing. Knowing all that you know now and that you've gone through now, and when we think of the word athlete in general, and that you've been on an epic journey with the identity and word athlete, where are you at now?
That's such an interesting way of putting it. I think that I look at athlete and you can be an athlete and you can also have that mindset and those takeaways and the things that you've learned from being an athlete into your everyday life. For example, it's like you work so hard to do well in a competition, to get into a good college. And for me, it was getting into a good college where I could sail and to qualify for regattas and to qualify and to represent your country and to whatever it may be. And I think that that's sports athletics and that's being an athlete. But then there's the other side where you can take everything that you worked on as an athlete and you're also that's trained your mindset. That's trained your mindset to move your body and to work out and to find that energy and that motivation that maybe people who weren't an athlete wouldn't find that. And that's fine, but it's just you have your own things that you have to do and you find that energy. And I think it's like when you think your tank is empty, you've still got 30 miles left. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's this really cool part of having that background and having that training. And now I refer to it as the real world, but everything's the real world. That you find that energy. Like I said, for Thriving Not Surviving, I will always find time for it, whether it's going to the bathroom and I'll at work and I'll find time to write a couple emails or to send something or to call someone. And when I complain to everyone else of how I'm like, I don't have time to do anything, but you always find time. Everyone finds time for what they want to do. Like if you want to, and I think that's the cool part about coming from that athletic background and that identity and that space that you do find time and you always will. And I know for the rest of my life that, and because there's so much more to come that I'll always find time for whatever it is. You can always find those 5 minutes, those 10 minutes. And I think that's, to me, it's this really cool thing of this like training for everything else, that it's like, it's no longer maybe And for me, I've never looked at it as that it's a closed book with, as far as sailing, as far as being an athlete, as far as all of those things, because I think there's a uniqueness in sailing. You can always sail at different levels, but it's also, I look at it and I'm like, I'm working so I can be able to afford sailing. Like I'm working so I can be able to try this new thing. That it's like when you're sailing, it's so great and it's so awesome, but there's also a point of where I'm like, I also was a student and I worked really hard in school and I found that energy and that motivation to try to get a good job and work my butt off to do that. And now I'm like, well, now I want to see what I can do here. And we'll just see where it goes. And I think that's this cool kind of trip and this cool kind of journey of that. Maybe it's from being an athlete, maybe it's from other things that have happened, that it's like, there's so many different adventures and there's so many different, and that sounds so corny and I kind of hate that, but this is so like this kind of flexible. It's not, no book is closed. It's like we're just reading a bunch of different books right now. And I think that's how I look at it, and that's how I look at kind of my athlete identity journey.
Love it. That's amazing.
Ashwa is a performance wellness program dedicated to helping athletes achieve peak performance and personal fulfillment through innovative approaches focusing on neuromuscular regeneration, re-education, and retention. Ashwa empowers athletes to find balance in mind, body, and emotions. Check out the links in our show notes for additional information about Ashwa and how they can support you in your journey.
Allie, if someone is in a situation right now, how can they get in touch with Thriving Not Surviving?
Yeah, absolutely. We have social media. So on Instagram, we have Thriving Not Surviving Social, our Instagram handle. We also have Facebook, if people still use Facebook. We also have our website, and we have like an outreach portal there, and we also have an email. But social media, email, website, whatever way, it's frequently checked, it's frequently monitored, and you will be put in touch with someone promptly, probably myself. And yeah, so I think that just wherever someone's at with their journey and whatever it is that they think they may need, or they just want to talk to someone, I think that there's always a door on the Thriving Not Surviving end.
And Allie, somebody who might be contemplating and it just maybe feels a bit scary right now to maybe take the first step, what is something that you might say to them right now?
I think that if you're contemplating making the step as to whether to tell someone, whether to not, for me, my story, it just kind of naturally came out. It had happened, and within, I think it was 24 hours, 48 hours, I just told my mom. And because it just kind of came out. And I think that if it's someone that you're not in that situation and you're contemplating whether to say something, whether not to, whether to keep holding it on, you never know until you make that first step as to talk to someone. And I know on the Thriving Not Surviving end, and I know that there are resources out there that you can tell, and it's not, you can just tell that person and you can just get it off your chest. And it's not putting it onto somebody else, but it's sometimes you just need to speak. And sometimes you just need to, I say this sometimes, that it's like, I just need to speak and I don't want anyone's opinion. I just need to talk, and I need it to be a blank space. And I think that you don't know until you get it off your chest. And then you're like, okay, now I've said that. It's the first time of me saying that. Okay. And then once it comes out once, it's like, you can figure it out from there. And there's no journey, there's no right or wrong. There's no, it has to be this way. And I think it's very special, and everyone's story is so unique and it's so different.
Absolutely.
But I also think that I'm in support of just getting it out there, because I think that if you keep it inside, you never know what's going to happen when you let it out, and it's going to come out in some way, shape, or form. And I think that, and whether it does or it doesn't, it may come out in another way, that it's better to just try to create your own narrative with it, and try to speak and try to get it out and just see from there. Yeah.
Just along that lines, something that does come up that clients that I've had, for instance, when they're afraid to say something, they're really afraid of repercussions. They're afraid to all of these things. And I think it's like a snowball in their head that just an avalanche then takes place in their mind. What do you say to people that might have that avalanche of if I say something, then it immediately means like all these things, which maybe a person's not ready for?
I think that communities are strong, and I think the survivor community, and I cannot tell you the amount of people from varying ages and varying walks of life who have heard about my story and have told me what happened to them and their stories, and that community is so strong. And yes, it's terrifying. Yes, it is so hard to come out and talk about something so personal and so horrible, but you have a strong community behind you, because anyone who has spoken out about that nature of something happening to them and has dealt with it on their own, they know in their own way where you're coming from and wherever you may be at. That I remember I spoke with someone and they were quite a bit older, but they remember being 19 years old and trying to deal with, oh my God, I'm a freshman in college and I don't want to think about this stuff. And why is it so hard for me to just have this whatever, like this relaxed attitude of being 19? And I think that for those people, yes, it is so scary and it is so hard, but you will come across and you will find a community of people that are so strong and are all connected by knowing maybe not your individual independent personal story, but they have been there too, and they know what it's like. And I think that's a very powerful thing.
Thanks, Allie.
So powerful.
So powerful.
Yeah, Allie, I shared this with Laura in one of our episodes about like the years of silence. For those who are contemplating on speaking out, because those years of silence is a lot of suffering too. And so in a lot of ways, as much fear could happen with sharing your story, it could also be liberating in a lot of ways. Like you said, that community coming together. I also think that when somebody has gone through something significant and has gone through something similar, we are better counselors through it because we connect to that story too in some weird like soul connection way, you know? And I think that is also incredibly powerful in finding that. Yeah, I think when you were speaking, a lot of it was like, gosh, I think about my story and the 30 years of silence of not saying anything and being alone in that 30 years of thinking that something was wrong with me and it was my fault, or I should have done this. And like you said, like disconnecting from your sport. Still to this day, I can't watch gymnastics because I have associated much of my abuse with it. And similar to Laura, but it had nothing to do with the sport, you know? And so that's just been the alarming thing. You being in this other side, you're now supporting athletes and you're seeing changes in other sports because you don't just work with sailors, you work with other athletes. Are there things that you feel like has shifted in like the dynamics and power of governing bodies with safe sport? Are there things that you see like an uprise on it? What are things that you feel like should change? And in your opinion, where do you see just like safe sports happening for all athletes and whole care, like compassionate care on athletes?
I think that there's definitely been a lot more focus and energy and talk about helping athletes and supporting athletes and providing resources for athletes, especially in the abuse, violence, assault arena and space. I think that there's a long way to go. I think that there's a lot of support that's needed. I think there's a lot of more pointed and directed energy and efforts. And I think that there's more awareness that needs to be brought toward organizations that can help those athletes, whether it's surviving, not surviving, or someplace else. As long as survivors are helped. It's a nonprofit organization. Like, just supposed to help athletes. They're just supposed to, I look at it and it's like, you want to be a clearinghouse and you want to be able to guide and support survivors who are going through the worst thing in their life probably, and help them however you can, whatever that may look like. And I think that providing those resources is definitely something that needs to be made more readily available. I think that there's definitely pockets, and there's definitely a lot of talk, but I think it's really a time right now where survivors need to be heard and supported and helped, but also a lot of organizations need to kind of put their money where their mouth is. That, okay, so what are you enacting? What are you doing? Okay, so how has this changed the survivor reporting experience? And okay, that's how it was then, but how is it now? And how is it different? And is that the case for one athlete, or is that the case for all athletes? And I think that there's been a lot of talk. I think there's been a lot of work, and I think that it's really, okay, so what's now? I think there's a lot of energy and a lot of momentum there, but I think it's really, okay, so how is it going to be when I have kids in sports? Okay, so how is it going to be? What is going to be different? I think it's for people who have this lens into not safe sport, but safe sports, and within what can happen with athletes and what can happen in sports. I think that you look at everything with a different lens. And I think that you're very wary and you're very cautious. And I think it's really being so aware of that, but also, okay, so we're aware of it because we all come at it with our own stories and our own experience, but there's also been a lot of talk about it. A lot of people are very aware of the need for change and the need for supportive athletes. And I really think that that's something that we as individuals who are aware of that, and as everyone else, it's really a time that, okay, so what are we going to do? What is it that, how are we going to keep our athletes safe? How are we going to create safer environments? What is it that we're going to do instead of just talking about it?
Yeah.
That's my thought.
Yeah. We're
Amen.
looking for a culture shift. We're
Absolutely.
looking for a paradigm shift, and that just brings all the intersections into play. Being female presenting, being a person of color, all the intersections, LGBTQIA+, like there's so many things that go into it. How can we keep people safe? And from a whole person perspective of an athlete versus, I mean, I just think historically about what athletes have been. I mean, just from gladiators to, it's been consumerism, it's been bloodthirst, it's been warfare, it's been, there's so much of the history of sports is rooted in these origins of violence. And to shift from that to a whole person conscious, an athlete is a human perspective, is going to actually require that we shift as a culture, that we treat all of us as humans, period. And that means not putting our money into programs that are notorious for being harsh or abusive, or, you know, being able to keep pressure on our congressional folks or representatives, or, you know, our local council people to be able to make sure that we are enacting things from our homes up. How are we teaching our kids? I'm very aware of how I teach my kids, of what to look for. Thinking about their bodies, thinking about, you know, the relationship between themselves and other kids in their classroom. You know, it is a whole population, culture, society paradigm shift that has to take place on so many levels. You know, somebody said the other day something like, I mean, we were talking about gymnastics, but like, how do you shift? It's almost like you have to clean slate and then start again with people who are very aware, people who are grappling with this and actually taking the time to make change across the board in their lives. Those are the people I want to see in power in any governing body, to be able to really, 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 truly make the changes that are necessary to ensure whole person care, compassionate care, trauma-informed care for every single person, coaches included. No, for everybody. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Whew. Well, so we've changed the world in a conversation. Anyway, Allie, we're wrapping up here. We just want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for amazing work that you're doing out there and supporting other people. We just appreciate you so much to be in the world right now, and we just thank you. There's nothing else I can say except for thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for having me. This has been an
Yes.
awesome opportunity.
So we
You
are
are welcome to
ending.
come all the time, actually.
All the time.
I'll be here.
Just
Yeah.
letting you know.
Yeah. And we can't wait to have drinks. That's going to be happening soon when Joy
Yes.
makes her way out here.
Yep.
So we are ending every session. We are ending every episode. Yeah, episode, session. Feels like it, right? With what we're calling Lightning Discuss. And this is based on a little game that my partner and I made up some time ago, where we're trying not to talk about the business of life, kids and work and all the stuff. We were trying to be something that's a little bit lighthearted. So that's how we're ending each one. Do you mind? Would you like to play, Allie?
Oh my gosh, I'd love to play. I love that
Okay.
kind of stuff.
Great. So I'm going to say a statement or a question, and I'm going to end with the word discuss. There is no debating. Everyone just answers as they feel free to do so. So, ready? Favorite fun word to say? Discuss.
I can go first because I have one at the top of my head. So I took a physiology class in high school, and the small bone at the end of your sternum is called a xiphoid process bone. And the only reason why I remember this bone, my brother's going to love this, is because my younger brother was tiny, tiny, skinny in high school. And I could see his whole rib cage, and I could see that tiny bone at the end of his sternum. And I'm like, I will never forget that bone because I can see John's xiphoid process bone.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
Dang it. Gosh,
Yeah.
you started out with a good one. Now
That's
I'm
a
going
really
to
good one.
really short. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm thinking. Laura, do you have a good?
Yeah, mine's very simple. It's the word bucket because it's just fun to say. Bucket.
Yeah.
Bucket. I got my bucket list. Bucket.
I have two of my good friends. We're always making fun of like corporate jargon. And so then we're always just like making fun of what everyone says in meetings and stuff. And so now I think it's so I love making fun of any like corporate jargon, people taking themselves too seriously. So like tabling this, or let's circle back to
Yeah,
this,
that's a good one.
or like let's put a pin in this, or we're not trying to boil the ocean here. So I just love to make fun of any like corporate jargon, any like business lingo. I just love it because I'm like, people will say it and they like don't, like I'll say it and I'll be joking and people will say it with a straight face and I'm like, you are not a brain surgeon. Like we're talking about a PowerPoint. So I think that and now it's something funny because now for the rest of, hopefully for the next couple of weeks, everyone's going to be in a meeting or something and you're going to hear someone talking like very seriously and they're whatever they're talking about and they're going to say like silly corporate jargon that you're now going to think of it and you're going to laugh, which you
We're going to think of you is what
That's
we're going to think of.
exactly what's going to happen.
Allie?
I'm going to text you. Allie, they said
please
it.
do. Please do. That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Allie, for joining us. We truly appreciate you, and we will be seeing you real soon.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for having me, and thank you so much for
Absolutely.
everything. This has been awesome.
Perfect.
Thanks, Allie.
Thanks. Okay, that was
Amazing.
amazing.
Absolutely amazing.
She's such a kick-ass person. So proud to say that she is now our friend. Like, amazing human being.
Incredible.
Who's doing phenomenal work, and I'm just wowed by her.
We are so lucky to be meeting so many amazing forever athletes and hearing their stories. And for all y'all listening out there, I know tons of you are also forever athletes, and sure that you're carrying your stories as well. So I'm hoping that you're finding connection and feeling in some way heard and seen by getting to meet these amazing people. So thank you, Allie, so much. Well, Joya, we've come to the end.
I know.
And so excited to keep it going. Next episode, we'll be talking with Ryan Sheehan, who is a 7-time Pan American medalist and 2-time World Championship team member for Canada. And not only that, He is one of the co-founders for Gymnasts for Change Canada.
Amazing.
So incredible. So excited to hear about his story. And anyway, that's right.
Yeah.
See
he's
you next
amazing.
time. Mhm.
Sounds great.
Love you,
Well, Laura,
Joy.
I love you more.
I love you most.
Ty. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, please reach out to us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok.
Share and follow us on Amazon, Spotify, and Apple. Help us out and leave a 5-star review. Thanks.